Welcome back and now tune into the other side of sports. I'm your host, Laws. It's a special edition. Got Aaron in here. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to look at some Ron Rivera press conference and see what Ron Khan had to say, analyze that, talk about that. We're going to take a little bit of look at some game film from Taylor Heineke and really just break it down and tell y'all the truth, why he shouldn't be the quarterback of the Washington football team going forward. I think we probably both know that he'll probably be back on the team, but they need to find another option. But before we get into that, this week, though, you definitely going to want to tune into the podcast. And the reason you're going to want to tune into the podcast is because we're going to talk about this Antonio Brown situation. Antonio Brown had an interview, and he went and talked about, Tom Brady, everything that happened with him, why he left the team, took his shirt off and all that, stuff that caused the uproar. And then how the Bucs basically trying to just defame him in any way that they can at this point. They just trying to make him look bad. You heard about the youngin he was talking to, how he snuck her in, broke COVID protocols to get her in and stuff like that. It's a whole mess. But all these people calling Antonio Brown crazy, dog, he's not crazy. We just need to stop that narrative. He's not crazy. Crazy is what Aaron Hernandez was. That Bama was crazy. Antonio Brown is not crazy. Is the Bama ignorant? Is he, a little bit, like he don't care and stuff like that? Of course. I believe that. But we're not just going to paint the man as crazy because that's what they do. When athletes don't play ball the way they want them to play, they label them as crazy. Aaron?
No, I agree. The Bama, he a little bit touched, but no more than the rest of the jokers that be running around here and people interact with every day. He's not a special kind of crazy. Like you said, he's not Aaron Hernandez.
But if you ask them, they will try to paint him as that. They'll try to paint him as.
Yeah, in this day and age, that kind of backfires because before you could paint somebody as crazy and it would be basically like a green light to kind of throw him away. Now, with the way mental health is kind of the attention that's placed on that, a lot of people will garner sympathy for somebody if you try to throw those accusations on them and feel like you should extend help to them rather than just use it as an excuse to throw them on the trash heap. So I think now they're trying to paint him as a liar. Like they've tried the crazy thing first and it didn't work. So now they're trying to double back and paint him as a liar or a con artist because their first strategy didn't work.
Yeah, it's not gonna work though. It's not gonna work over here. But yeah, we're gonna have some of the interview, some of the different questions that were asked, to him, and we're going to kind of go through that whole thing, talk about the funny business. You already know. We got this Ron Rivera press conference queued up. We're gonna run it, talk about it, then get in some Taylor Heineke. So let me go ahead and run this press conference.
It's the Charles Leno extension. So just what made him such a priority for you all?
Well, one of the things obviously is he's a left tackle, and the way he played, he finished up ranked the sixth best left tackle in the league. So, we feel pretty strongly about, bringing him back and having him be part of what we're trying to do.
Is this something that you thought maybe when you signed him in May, hey, we can have this guy for a year and maybe give him a multi-year extension if it works out, or were you not thinking that far ahead at the time?
No, we were. I mean, again, you get tape, an option to watch him on tape.
Number one.
He is, and just the consistency in which he plays. And we saw that again, and we saw it at a high level. So finishing up this year, it was going to be a priority for us in the offseason. So why not go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity?
How nice is it to have that spot secure with the uncertainty that you have with Brandon Sheriff going into free agency and Chase Roullier coming back from his injury?
Well, it takes a lot of pressure off you, that's for sure, going forward, and it lessens the urgency in terms of that whole group. It's a good group. It's a good group of guys. We love the depth that we have on it. We love the continuity. So again, it's something we want to be able to take care of that group going forward. You guys saw how valuable it was for us during a certain stretch of the season. It's just one of those things that we want to make sure we were ready to go.
Ron, is there something that you learned? You obviously going to watch Charles on tape. What did you learn just coaching him throughout the season that maybe enhanced his value for you?
Well, the way he affects the other guys around him. He had a tremendous rapport with the other offensive linemen. He had some leadership qualities I thought that were really good in terms of his relationship with not just the offensive guys, but guys on the defensive side. And, those are the kind of guys you want here, veteran guys that have had success, guys that understand what it takes, and guys that are going to do it the way that you need to have it done.
One more on this run. I guess this is, I think, one of your first multi-year contracts to a guy who's 30 or older. And I know last offseason you talked about, wanting to stay young and get young. How do you balance, what's the situation versus, maybe make an exception, I guess, to that idea?
Well, first of all, the position more so than anything else. That position tells you, that you have to have a guy that can hold that spot down for a while. Secondly, again, as I said, one of the things that I really do value is the leadership quality that we saw from him. And I think that was a real important one. The balance being, as you look at the number of young guys that we have in key backup positions, and to have a veteran guy in that group, I think really helps them.
Ron, beyond the players who you ruled out, is there anybody that you're at least thinking about possibly playing less than normal just because of the last game? Maybe they're dealing with an injury or just not wanting to give them as many reps as normal?
I wouldn't say that as much as we're talking about young guys we want to see play a little bit more.
When Wes Schweitzer was healthy, what did you see from him this season? Did you see a jump year to year in just the way he played?
Yes, we saw a very stout physical football player play with a little bit more confidence, and I think feeling and understanding of what we were doing offensively. You really saw that, and that's why his loss was a big loss as well as far as positional value. He plays guard and center, and he was technically our third center and playing well at that point, and had played some guard for us this year. So his value is really as to who he is as a football player is the way he plays, and that's physical.
Do you see him as a potential starter at guard going forward? Could he make that next step?
Well, I know this about him is he's a guy that gives us tremendous value because of his position flex.
Do you have any opinion on how Montez is doing with all he's going through?
No, not necessarily. It again, that's something that's kind of between us and him. We don't really want to talk about that.
Ron, we've talked so much this year about Jonathan Allen's year. It makes the Pro Bowl. Deron Payne's been right there next to him this whole time. What have been your thoughts just on his year and how he's progressed going in his fourth year?
I think he took a big step compared to last year. I really do. Again, it may not show in numbers, and you're not going to see that all the time from defensive tackles. What you have to see is the whole picture when it comes to those guys. And I thought he was an explosive guy that got vertical, made some plays behind the line of scrimmage that we needed. I think he's a guy that's going to continue to grow. I do like his pass rush push inside. That's another thing. He can affect a quarterback because he can get that vertical push, and that will inevitably help our defensive ends.
Ron, where did he, just in terms of the details of the game or technique or whatever, where did you feel he improved the most to make some of those plays?
I like the way he gets vertical. I really do. There was a time when he was playing sideways when we first got here, and that was one of the things that we struggled with in terms of what we're trying to get him to understand because of his athleticism and his quickness. You want to see that first initial vertical step to get into those creases and just clog things up on the inside, and you begin to really see it as the season progressed. And as the year wore on, you just knew he understood, and that's what we're starting to see even more so.
Hey, Ron, you have a couple other guys that are set to expire with Leno. How hopeful are you this is the start of locking up JG or Bobby McCain or anyone like that?
Well, I hope it is the beginning of starting to lock guys up, because again, if we can take care of as many of these guys as possible before we get to free agency, that's a big boon on us because it takes a lot of the pressure off of us going forward. in terms of having personnel that we like, guys that fit what we do already.
Terry is one guy who isn't going to expire this offseason, but certainly seems like a foundational player. Do you have any intention of maybe opening up those talks early with him this offseason?
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate our roster when we're finished this coming week and talk about all the guys that we have and what our future looks like with all these guys. And I think out of that meeting, we'll come to conclusions on a lot of these guys.
Ron, obviously this year with some of the high price free agents, it maybe hasn't worked out at least in year one, but in your 2 years, a lot of the lower key guys, the McKissicks, the Bobby McCains, Charles Leno, have kind of worked out. Is there a difference when you're assessing some of these lower key guys that maybe has worked for you that is different when you're going after some higher price?
Can we fire these trash media people, though? These media people are
the
trash.
Big thing is obviously is fit and what you're hoping for. You know, the big difference for the higher price guys is what the expectations are. And I think that's the thing, because, you know, those can easily disappoint, where the guys with the lower expectations, they can easily please. So, you know, that's a combination of those things. And the one thing you can never account for is when a guy gets hurt.
How much do you have to factor in quarterback this offseason when you're talking about locking up these guys and adding new pieces, changing pieces? Because you've had a relatively low cap there with, you know, the guys you have at quarterback. Does that kind of factor into other moves you make?
No. I mean, what we're going to do obviously is look at our football team and really decide, you know, what's the most important position. Well, to us, it is quarterback. And we'll do what we have to do going forward. I mean, we're going to look at every opportunity, every prospect, every situation, every circumstance. And hopefully as we go through this, we can come up with the right answer.
Take a couple more.
What's the plan for Curtis this offseason? Will he stay here, and kind of how confident do you feel that he'll be able to get back to 100% by the start of the season?
Well, the plan for him is to get healthy first and foremost, and to get to 100% or as close as we can get him to. You know, as far as where he's going to be, you know, part of it is he'll be where he's, you know, where he typically goes in the off season. Then once we get ready for the opportunity to have these guys back, which will be when we start the OTA program, then we'll look to see guys come in.
Ron, you previously said that you wanted it, or that Kyle Allen could possibly play these last 2 games. Obviously, he didn't last week. Do you plan to use him this week, even beyond just circumstances?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, if the situation is what I think we need to have, yeah, he'll get an opportunity to play.
Last one. All right.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
The first question should have been, what are your plans at quarterback? All these secondary questions about these alias Bammers who came onto the team that may not be here in 6 months. Who cares? What is this about, Aaron? What is this about?
It almost feels like they are pointing their own media in questions, like they putting the questions through the ringer before they even get to the press conference. It's like everything's a softball. Like, it's just a waste. Everything over there is low budget. And as long as he's there, that's basically what you're going to get.
This has no use, dog. This is a hand-me-down shirt with holes in it, dog. You can't wear it. Like, what are they talking about?
You going into the last game of the season. This is the last chance you're going to have to get a presser before a game, and they have no relevant questions to what's going on there this year, to anything. And
they didn't ask anything even about the game. They didn't go into it. They didn't ask questions about, you know, what is your plan going into this game? You know, the season is pretty much over. Are you looking at this game as, you know, are you now factoring in where you're going to draft in this game? Is that even in question? Are you thinking about that going into this game? Like, that's a question that I want to know, because it's a question that everybody else is asking themselves. Those are the questions that we want to hear people ask, questions that we're thinking about in our minds, not these, I don't even know what kind of questions these are, dog. Nobody cares about Charles Leno. I'm sorry. Yes, he was a surprise. He came on and played tackle for you. You know, you may can go into the offseason with that spot shirt up, but to like spend 3 minutes of the interview to talk about that, to me, it's a waste. It's a waste, dog. And the fact that they're asking these questions at this juncture and they're coming and they're approaching this press conference this way, to me, it just shows that nobody's serious about winning, dog. Nobody's serious about winning. Yet Tomlin will sit up there. These Bammers will ask this Bammer, are you concerned about the future of your job? And they'll ask him all types of stuff, right?
Right. How does that not come up? They didn't ask him if he was worried about getting fired, if he'd done enough to keep his job. None of it. You would think these would be relevant questions going into the last game of the season. Didn't hear the Giants come up one time.
The team underperformed. They underwhelmed. Coming into the season, this defense was supposed to have, you know, the best defense in the league. People were saying that this was going to be a top 5 defense. You finished at 27th in the league.
You won a division last year. Now you're finishing third. You're finishing third. They didn't ask him what happened to you saying that you would be able to build off of the momentum of last year. Like, none of the failures came up. And this is partially indicative of why these things go on over here, because nobody anywhere in the realm of any job having to do with football has a clue of what's going on over there. Nobody.
So to me, this is appalling. That they ask these questions that they're not relevant at all. These questions that were asked, nobody's going to care come Monday. Nobody's going to care about his answers to any of those questions. Frankly, I don't even care the answer to those questions today. So I know I'm not going to care Monday. And that's problematic, because ultimately what your job from a media standpoint is to ask challenging questions, right? That you hold to see if there's what happens as a result. There were no questions where you say, you know what, this week I got to see what happens like with these players, or I got to see what this is, or whatever. There was no challenge in the questions at all. So if the Bammers go out and lay an egg and score 0 points, no one cares. If they go out there and score 50 points, like, no one cares, because there was no expectation that was set for this game. They didn't even ask the simple question, are you going into this game trying to win this game, or is it a game you're looking like? To me, that's probably the most pressing question that we know, because we talked about it, Aaron. They right now potentially could be picking 6,
as high as 6, but if they end up winning this game,
but as back as what, 14, 15,
right?
That's a lot of players in there, though.
And that's how you end up going from picking a what's that? The guy that Dallas drafted.
Oh,
the linebacker,
you
Micah
talking about
Parsons,
Parsons,
and you end up with a Jamin Davis. That's the difference. Every year, that's the difference. You get the second or third or fourth best player at their position.
If you know what you're doing, you might get the 6th or 7th, because Jamin Davis ain't even the second best player. He ain't even the third best. He ain't even the 4th. He like 18th. I don't know how many linebackers came out this year, but he not in the top echelon of linebackers that played this year as a rookie. So I just
couldn't even get on the field the first 10 games of the season.
Yeah,
so that tells you they knew they failed. So it's just
nobody
no accountability over there.
That wasn't even a question. How do you feel about Jamin Davis as your first round pick from last year, going into this year, potentially having a first round pick? How does that factor in? What are you guys doing? You're still lacking at linebacker. Are you looking into the draft at linebacker? Because your first round pick from last year did not perform up to snuff. Is that not a good question to ask? This joint is a clown show, Aaron.
Yeah, so
Ron
currently at 9. Um, they're currently at 9 with a win, with a loss, and a couple other wins by other teams. They could be uh, as 6 or 7.
Mhm.
If they win, they could be as low as 14. 14.
That's 7 spots difference. I just yeah, and that's the thing. I just don't know where he's earned the right and the ability to just not be asked any challenging questions at all. Like there wasn't one. There wasn't one. The one girl asked about Taylor Heineke, and they said, we're going to evaluate all of our positions, but it was still a softball question
Right. They act like
because
they so scared of his response if they don't ask it in the right way. Who gives a
yeah,
what he
because
thinks about the question?
the question they should have asked about Taylor Heineke is Taylor Heineke finished middle of the pack, middle to back half of the pack as far as stats concerning QBs this year. He started almost every game this year. After looking at his performance, what grade would you give him for this year?
Easy question. No brainer. Common sense.
A, B, C, or D? Like it's simple. And that's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question, dog. I don't. I mean, I guess that's why we can't get in the building, dog.
They denied
Because
my
we don't
press
have
pass.
no we don't have no allegiance to the team or any backdoor affiliations. We just regular guys who know football, watch it intently, and we got questions, dog. What would you rank Taylor Heineke this year? His performance?
Um, well, he's a loser. What are they? 3 games under 500. About going to finish what? 2 games under 500. I think he's shown that he can't be an NFL starter. Um, there's a lot of places that would like him as a backup. I'm not one of those people because I expect that my backup to be able or to be a future starter. Um, Not somebody that you plan to hold the clipboard or just come in for a couple of games when the starter's hurt. I just approach that position differently. That's how you end
Mm-hmm.
up in the situations that Washington's in now, by just taking guys that you don't plan to ever play and then have them come in and you end up having a losing season. Um, so I would say, given he was sitting on a couch, we grading on a curve, he gets a C minus. If you just talking about football, objectively, D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a
Yeah,
less
I think
talented Kirk Cousins.
yeah, I think you think about it like he gets extra credit because and you
The
hear the
story.
commentators all the time. The story, though, the commentators always say they were like, "Oh, yeah, he was just a few months ago he was studying at a community college and he was doing." It's like, dog, who cares? We don't never get that.
Ever.
They be like, they don't never talk about the story with us. Is what we can't do, and you see that he has an inability to throw from the pocket.
And I haven't heard one broadcast talk about his inaccuracy, about his lateness, his inability to go through reads, his holding the ball too long. None of the stuff that we constantly heard with an actual rookie that was 21 years old and 20 years old last year, or any of the other quarterbacks like that in the league. They just make choices not to use that language when it comes to guys that look like them.
Yeah,
They're going out of their way not to use the language that they use every week when it pertains to other guys.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna be real interesting to see what the Washington football team does in this offseason. What kind of options at quarterback they pursue, what kind of names are being thrown around, what kind of pieces they're able to acquire, what happens come draft time. Of course, OSS, we're going to follow it. We're going to, have a live draft party or something to kind of follow just the draft in general, and look at the prospects and stuff. But I don't feel confident in the Washington football team and their ability to choose players, to put this team in a position to win. If you go an entire season with Taylor Heineke as your quarterback, to me, winning is not a priority for you. Say what you want about the 4-game stretch. Even before that, we knew it was fool's gold. We could see the chinks in the armor,
They
so
started
to
2 and
speak.
6. They went on a 4-game winning streak and are still 3 games under 500. What does that tell you?
Yeah. Fool's gold, man. Fool's gold. Uh, Follow us at OSS 980 at Other Side of Sports. We'll be back. I mean, I don't even know if we need to do the press conferences anymore, dog, because they not saying nothing we want to hear. They're not asking any questions we would ask. And I'd be interested to see who's overseeing this media situation. I I
And
would
it's
be curious to
interesting
know.
because Dan actually bought ESPN 980, which to me is an egregious conflict of interest when the team owns the radio station and is recording from the actual practice facility. So it's just, I don't know how you expect anything different coming out of this team or how anybody's ever surprised that none of the stuff that goes on over there works because they just do everything backwards. They go about everything the wrong way. Like, how do you have no media personality with the balls to ask one of the tough questions? Ron gets snarky with you one week, and everybody just says, you know what? It ain't going to work. We can't ask him real questions, so let's just go softball on the rest of the season. The question should have gotten harder. It's part of your job as a coach to answer the question. It's one of
But
your
this is
main jobs as a
but
coach
it,
because
but
you're
it,
not.
but you,
Go ahead.
Aaron, you know how it is. A player will get harder questions than the coach. I haven't
And
heard any. When you talk about accountability, right? We haven't heard any murmurings or any talks about who's going to be held responsible. This Ron is the same coach who fired a kicker to give a message to his team. But we have all this mediocrity all over the team, and there's no accountability being held to them. We're
because they don't really care.
27th in
Like,
defense.
they want it to be one way. They want it to be what they don't like is the issue. But just like we told them last year, getting rid of Dwayne at 20 years old wasn't going to fix your franchise. It wasn't going to propel you to what you thought it was going to propel you to. I said last year, winning the division was a mistake. That would set you backwards, not forward.
Mhm.
And it's like everybody wants to get up in arms and argue and fight and be upset when stuff like that gets said over here. But then we wait a year, 2 year, 3 years, and it's always ends up being right. So at what point do you try something different or think about the people you choose to listen to? Because they always have the answers, but those answers never work.
Yeah,
The
it
culture to
doesn't.
me is worse than what it was before.
It's worse because it's a fake culture of we're good. We righted the ship. It's like, nah, you haven't. It's more the same culture. The only difference is when the media had turned on Jay and them, they turned on them. So they just didn't care. The media here hasn't turned on Ron yet.
But that's part of the issue. The media shouldn't have to turn to ask the right questions. That should be the job description. And that tells you how toxic it is over there because they wait until they're sure the coach isn't coming back or it's so bad that it can't work before they ask the questions they should have been asking out the gate. They asked Bill Belichick harder questions than that. Mike Tomlin harder questions than that. And that's what, 7 Super Bowls in the last 20 years. So it's a bunch of ridiculousness over there. Everybody wants to blame the black quarterback the last, whatever, 10 years, but it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with it. The fury and animosity in the questions he was getting when he left Dwayne in last year is worse than what's happened this year. With a 4-game winning streak and then starting 2-6. Nobody asked about Ron getting benched. I just find it very interesting, this fan base and because the media is going to softball because it's no pressure on them to ask the right questions. The fans just accept the foolishness.
No pressure.
There's no outrage. There's no questions as to whether he's competent or qualified to do the job that he's doing. Nobody's asked about his record as a coach in the NFL and only having 3 winning seasons in 11 years of coaching. None of these things have come up.
That is a question that should be come up, but they scared to ask that question because nobody wants to lose their inside track, dog. They go to those media things.
If you want to run Dan out of town so bad,
events,
then let them snatch your credentials because that's not how the media is supposed to be run.
First of all, you shouldn't be able to snatch the media's credentials if they're media. Unless the Bama's doing something egregious, like trying to hit on the women or doing something out of control. But if he asking questions, you shouldn't be able to just bar somebody from being there just because they ask challenging questions. But I guess that's not how it works, though. I guess that's not how it works. I mean, trust me, I want to go to the golf tournaments too, to watch the football team golf tournaments and all that stuff too. Like, I mean, it is what it is. But you gotta play buddy. And it's the thing. True friendship. I mean, I'm not saying they're my friends, but I'm just saying, like, you think about like true friends. The true friendships is the ones, if you get a terrible haircut, they be like, dog, who cut your hair, bro? Like, dog, you let some stranger cut your hair. Like, they can challenge you, young. Those are the ones that really progress you in the right direction. When you got everybody around you that just yes men or, just go along with whatever you do, even if it's foolish, you're not going to get better that way. They're not helping you. They're hurting you. Because you think anything is permissible. You think you can just do anything. Like, there should be an outrage over Jamin Davis, though. There should be outrage. Outrage.
I haven't heard any questions about is Del Rio coming back? Are the coordinators coming? None of these questions, though, there should have been automatic, easy ask questions. And they didn't even sniff it. Like you said, they spent 3 minutes talking about Leno Jr., who nobody could pick out of a lineup.
Nobody cares, though. If the Bama went out that joint and gave up 9 sacks tomorrow, who would care? We'll just be like, the Bama's a backup. He's sorry. Well, now Bama's a kid now because they gave him bread. But I'm just saying, like, what is we talking about when there's so many other pressing issues that are at hand? So we gonna follow it. We're gonna watch it. Tune in. OSS 980, Other Side of Sports. We're gonna be covering it. Whatever happens on this Ron Con ride, because the Bama got us on a roller coaster ride, dog.
Facts.
It's a theme. We got us in the theme park. He got the ride. He got the Bama pushing the hatch. All like, it's a circus over here. We gonna follow it. The name coming up. That whole name. It's a distraction. It's all a distraction, dog, from the real issues. The team name is not going to change anything. It's all a distraction. But we here for it. Again, follow us at OSS 980, Other Side of Sports. It's your host, Laws, signing out. Peace.